Good afternoon. Today is the 4th day of February 2016, and we continue with our explorations in Savitri with much gratitude for Alok being back with us. And we are taking up still the book of the Traveler of the Worlds on page 145, The Kingdoms of the Little Life. I had begun last time reading Narad I Am Here, I Am Here. I'd like to pick that up again, perhaps reading the one paragraph over again, where Narad says, "But Savitri was not his sole occupation. Savitri alone, which was the preoccupation nearest to his heart, will one day fire the imagination of the world by its sheer bulk and beauty of profound images, vivid words, felicitous and daring expressions, every detail of which he took sculptor-like pains to develop. The first book itself went through 10 revisions, and had he been able to maintain the same godlike labor throughout, or had he not been compelled to lean on the support of a weak and at times unwilling assistant required to keep pace with his divine energy, Savitri would have seen the light of day before his own life's light had withdrawn. But alas, that was not to be."
This last bit reminds me that every time Sri Aurobindo withdrew from a certain field, he established the Divine Mother's power there. So before he withdrew from the Indian political scene, he had already established India as the Shakti, Mother Durga in the heart of people, and he knew that the rest will be worked out over a period of time. Then when he withdrew from the collectivity which was gathering around him for hastening the supramental advent, he placed in the midst of humanity, in the heart of humanity, the Divine Mother herself.
Yes.
And when he, as Nirodha says, seemingly withdrew from the gross material field or the field of our senses, he placed in the hands of humanity Savitri. So this is always we see Sri Aurobindo going in the background and placing something else in the midst of us. And these three are indeed the fulcrum. If we see, the mother, of course, the Divine Mother is the core and the base of the new creation. India, the mother, has a great role to play in the future life of humanity. And Savitri, is, as he said that the Gita will yet liberate humanity, we may say that Savitri will prepare humanity for the eventual transformation. So that's how we are so beautifully interconnected. So one of the problems when we speak about spiritual life, spiritual existence, spiritual metaphysics is to transcendently create a not just a divide, but oversimplify things by saying, well, there is matter and there is spirit, there is body and there is soul, but there is much in between. And that much in between deeply influences our life, our everyday moment of living. There's a whole play of forces, and particularly in integral yoga, it is important to reckon these forces. It's not a world-shunning spirituality that we take no cognizance of the world forces at play, simply withdraw into a quiet solitude and feel the bliss of the infinite. We have to know the forces through which the present world consciousness moves and how they react to the new consciousness. So all this is a part of the play. And so we see the great significance of particularly this book, The Traveler of the Worlds. Because this reveals to us all the various components, energies, forces, beings, which are part of the mid-world. Because normally we divide things into black and white, but there is a lot which is grey. These are the mid-worlds, the vital worlds and the, early mental worlds. Later, higher mental worlds are the bright kingdoms. But the kingdoms of the little mind belong still to the gray zone. And so too many of the vital worlds are mid worlds. They belong to the gray zone. Below are the dark worlds which dip into the subterranean.
But he gives us a picture so clear,
Yes, so clear.
of those worlds and of the evolutionary thrust,
Yes.
and how it begins in those worlds.
Their role and purpose in evolution,
Yes.
their impact upon human life, and their place in the total scheme of things, and also the resistances they offer to further evolution. So all this in one single panoramic view. That's the beauty of Sri Aurobindo. And we read last time about how humanity experiences life in its early primitive beginnings. But we must, as Sri Aurobindo says, the primitive is not defined by either the dress one wears or the place one belongs to. It's defined by a certain state of consciousness. And that continues to linger under more modern garbs. So here we have this interesting, these lines which we had read, at which we stopped.
Yeah, I think we could start with, or he lived, or he lived as lives the solitary brute.
Yeah, no, we have two more lines above. In others, than his kind, he sensed a foe. So there are people who are extremely afraid of strangers, of everybody. Now, at an animal level, where this world really expresses itself, is very natural. You see, all animals, they have within themselves a kind of innate fear. They live by fear. Even a tiger lives by fear. So if you go too close, it tries to keep you away. Even snakes, they could easily kill, but they try to keep away. But if you step, it'll bite. So it's an instinctive reaction. Now, it's very normal and natural at their level because they need to survive too. But at a human level, it becomes very abnormal and can be the cause of much suffering and disaster, this kind of a paranoia. And very often it has a direct relevance to at least my field in psychiatry. I see very often that as the degeneration starts or regression of consciousness, one can enter into these worlds of intense suspicion. And it's one of the signs that things are not all right. It's very interesting that people have documented this about great kings also. There was a famous king called Kansa in Indian mythology who toward the end became so suspicious that he wouldn't trust even his closest lieutenants. Same thing we see in Hitler's life.
And Stalin's.
They couldn't trust even the person who was closest. So this is right from the lower vital worlds and the lowest vital that these things spring up, these kind of thoughts. So
is it dominated by fear?
Fear. Basically it's fear, suspicion, and then we project all our dark feelings and impulsions onto others because we look at others also in the same image.
Yes.
So we believe others also are trying to threaten and possess just as we feel like. So this is a very...
And in 15 lines he gives it to us
gives
here.
a description of that. In others than his kind he sensed a foe, an alien unlike foes to shun and fear, a stranger and adversary to hate and slay. So these are the things which create incidents like, we recently had in Bangalore where a Tanzanian woman was killed. Not killed, but really badly mauled. And, because another African had gone half an hour before who crushed a man to death. So he escaped. But the anger went on to this Tanzanian woman who probably had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
So this is like other than his kind. So this is the rule of the pack. It can go to any extent. People who hold the same surname, people begin to feel affinity with them. And people from the same village, people with the same language, same custom. So they feel they are close to me. Whereas others may be much closer deep inside in the aspiration, but that sense doesn't grow.
But this warped hatred of groups like Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, Ku Klux Klan. Now, of course, their modern avatars, ISIS and all this is other than his kind. Yeah. Or he lived as lives the solitary brute. At war with all, he bore his single fate. The solitary brute. Again, we can image him. As you said, Savitri is full of images. We can image him living in a forest, having a bludgeon and wearing a animal skin. Or we can image him in more modern dress, completely alienated from the world, living in a high posh, high-rise society building, but feeling the same consciousness.
Yes.
This is the brute,
Yes.
who is always at war with everything, or he believes that everything is at war with him. Absorbed in the present act, the fleeting days, none thought to look beyond the hour's gains, or dream to make this earth a fairer world. There is a touch of divine pathos in these lines.
Oh, yes.
What would the divine be feeling about our humanity? We feel very great and all the time want, oh, God should do this, God should do this. But when he looks at us, what he must be experiencing? There are letters of Sri Aurobindo which are filled with this, pain of the divine, if I may use the word. In one of the letters, Sri Aurobindo writes, when someone asks him that, will humanity be saved? He says, a more important question is whether humanity wants to be saved.
Yes.
And then he says, does it really deserve to be saved? So it's very shocking to, a very anthropomorphic view of God and man, that God is meant to only serve humanity. But if we look at our life, much of our life is spent only absorbed in our present act and for our own gains. Who thinks about fairer world tomorrow? I mean,
And his letters to Baron,
yes.
sometimes they are so
So,
poignant.
yes, touching. Even the mothers spoke that. And at one point she says, the earth will be saved, that is for sure.
Yeah.
Whether humanity will be saved or not is a question that the mother has left hanging, and I can only do the same.
Yes.
Because this is the state of most of humanity. None thought to look beyond the hour's gains, or dreamed to make this earth a fairer world, or felt some touch divine surprise his heart. The gladness that the fugitive moment gave, the desire grasped, the bliss, the experience won, movement and speed and strength were joy enough, and bodily longings shared, and quarrel and play, and tears and laughter, and the need called love.
What a powerful line.
It's like a punchline.
Yeah.
What people call as love, nothing but a bodily need. That's what death will question Savitri.
Yes.
Because this is the domain of death. For death, this is what love is. And death says, oh, I know about love. It's nothing but a bodily longing. It's a glandular secretion. And Savitri tells, my love is not a longing of the heart or a craving of the flesh. But this is what much of humanity is. All that it lives is from so-called moment to moment, not in the highest sense of the word, but in the lowest sense of the word. And they are drifting with time and absorbed in the present act. In war and clasp, these life wants join the all life. This is a very profound truth Sri Aurobindo is revealing in these 4 lines. In war and clasp, these life wants join the all life. Wrestlings of a divided unity, inflicting mutual grief and happiness, in ignorance of the self forever one.
Yeah.
So it's a game of life. If you look at it from the vantage point of the vastness, it's a game of life. So when a tiger and a deer, they are running from, one is being preyed upon, the other is a prey. So life is playing the game. In one, to the tiger it gives strength, to the deer it gives swiftness. Both are powers of life. And it says, okay, let's see. The form, of course, is involved. But it's like, many such plays people play, or even nowadays there are computer game where you are the player. There is only one player. But you have 2 sides and 2 teams and you are playing. playing on the two teams. So something similar, all life, it stages this game so that its powers can manifest and emerge from nature's sleep. So when maybe some early pre-deer creatures were those, they were not so swift, they were quite bulky. And I can imagine tigers chasing them, and they develop swiftness, challenged by the tiger. And then they become, what the more modern version of deer is. And this is how the game of life goes on. It's a game she plays. But we get caught, we don't know the all life. So through wrestling and through love, because essentially life in an individual form instinctively seeks the all life. And there are only two ways, either to fight and defeat or be defeated, in which case it gets absorbed, or to love and in the process lose oneself. So these are the only two ways, wrestle or embrace of love. And Sri Aurobindo says that in one of his aphorisms that ultimately these are the two approaches finally to unite with the divine. One is you wrestle with him till finally he finishes you and absorbs you back into him. Of course, this is the path of the Asura, not recommended because you don't fulfill the purpose. You unite with him but without fulfilling the grand plan.
And the Titan.
Yes, and the Titan. The other is where you give him the embrace of love, in which case also you are crushed. The ego is crushed, but there is the delight. So these are the two ultimate movements that the soul makes. So wrestlings of a divided unity, look at this line, inflicting mutual grief and happiness in ignorance of the self forever one. So we think so and so has hurt me, so and so loves me, I love this person, but actually as Mother says, it is love coming from its source, going back to its source in another person. That's all that love is. And that's why hatred, jealousies, these are emotions which must be kept far, far away from oneself. Because ultimately, whom do you hate? Sri Aurobindo says, the hater knows not, it is himself he hates. The lover knows not, it is himself he loves. Even psychologically it is true. That we love those who reflect some portions of ourselves. And
we hate those.
And we hate those who reflect those portions of ourselves which we don't want to confront.
Exactly.
And these people image it. So we have hidden it, now they image it. And we don't like to see it. We want to crush it, finish it. So it's true at every level. Arming its creatures with delight and hope, a half-awakened nescience struggle there to know by sight and touch the outside of things. Now look at this, beautiful line. Normally we say so ignorantly that seeing is believing. Here Sri Aurobindo says, what do you see? Just the outside of things. Seeing is not believing. Seeing can be fooling also. Nature fools us all the time with sight and sound. It makes us believe that we live in something very real and concrete. But it's nothing but, a kind of delusion, but so collective that we don't really realize it. It's like living in a blind man's zone. So
and I love that passage where I don't know who said it, you will know, but we don't see Sri Aurobindo, he sees us.
Yes, that is the blind saint called Sharanand. So yes, that's a very beautiful thing. Thanks for reminding it. So he was in the queue for darshan, and someone asked him. He was a saint in his own right with his own following.
Yes.
And he was asked by someone that you are going to have darshan of Sri Aurobindo. What for? He said, what do you mean? He said, Sri Aurobindo won't speak and you can't see. So what's the point of darshan? He said, even if I had the eyes, how much can I see?
Yes.
I am going so that his gaze can fall upon me. It's a totally new sense of darshan.
Yes.
His gaze can fall upon me. Sri Aurobindo says that live always as if you were under the very gaze of the Divine Mother.
Yes.
This, his gaze being upon us.
In the dining room they had that, I don't know if it's still there. act always as if the
Yes,
mother were watching you.
yes.
And when I came as a young man, these guys were there, and they said, "Oh, big brother, big brother." That was their idea, that that mother was big brother
Yes.
here, looking at it. But when you really look at that saying, if you could live in that,
Yes, and many such things, very often people get tormented. Oh, I don't see, I don't have a vision, I don't see the mother. Doesn't matter. Mother is seeing you, that is enough.
yes.
Similarly, I have this problem, that problem. Sri Aurobindo writes in one of the letters, all that you must have is to know, remember that the mother loves you and you are the mother's child. That's all you need to know.
Yes.
Mother loves you. Look at it. We can't love, but she loves us. That's the faith that we must keep. All that you need to remember is that the mother loves you and you are the mother's child. Base your life on this fact and everything else will unfold itself. So, instinct was formed in memory's crowded sleep. This again, Sri Aurobindo, how beautifully he blends science and art and beauty and love and divinity and matter so beautifully. Only the divine artist can make such a lovely amalgam. Now what he says is really something which is discussed in the scientific circles, particularly when people debate how is instinct formed. So there are a lot of studies on that, and they realize that it's a kind of subconscious memory which we don't know how it flows, but flows sometimes even from one generation to another. Now, they have done a lot of research, modern research, and they have come to this kind of a so-called conclusion. And look at how Sri Aurobindo,
In one line.
in one line, half a line. Instinct was formed in memory's crowded sleep. It's literally like this instinct is formed. You must have seen that movie where this geese was following the mother geese, and when they are still young, this girl begins to behave like a mother geese, and they follow her wherever.
She's in a plane.
Yes, she's
And they
in the
follow
plane,
her
they follow her.
in
Because
formation, yes.
for them, she is the mother geese.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. She may not have wings or she may look very different. So memory is crowded sleep. When a baby is small, then all these things go and create a kind of instinctive sense. And there are many practical aspects which flow out of it. The past lived on as in a bottomless sea, the sea of the subconscious, in which all these crowded experiences go and sink. Inverting into half thought, the quickened sense, she felt around for truth with fumbling hands. She, of course, is the little life. Clutched to her the little she could reach and seize and put aside in her subconscious cave. The little she could seize, and that goes into the subconscious cave. And she remembers it. We have as a child, we used to read this famous story of Androcles and the lion.
Mm-hmm.
So the lion remembered that, the lion remembers that the Androcles had come and taken out the thorn.
The thorn from its foot.
Thorn from its foot.
Yeah.
So the story was, of course, a very humanized one that, much later the, animal remembered and spared. Now, it's not because there is a conscious thought that the animal suddenly became kind and was compassionate. No, these are not experiences which animal consciousness can have. But there is a half thought, there is a memory.
Yeah.
And it's that memory to which this animal kind suddenly reacts in response. So we have this beautiful line. So must the dim being grow in light and force and rise to his higher destiny at last. Look up to God and round at the universe and learn by failure and progress by fall. This is the staircase created for man.
There it is.
For ascent of life, for ascent of consciousness. So in the beginning, this is inevitable. So we can't claim absolute protection and no failure, nothing, a very smooth life when we are still going through. It's much later that one can claim that kind of state. So we have these, I'll read these lines again. So must the dim being grow in light and force and rise to his higher destiny at last. So everybody will rise to his higher destiny to start with. But this is the steps of the way, and we should not blame either God or karma or anything else. It's just an evolutionary process. A 5-year-old child going through a schooling process in kindergarten can't, expect that I should be allowed like the adult to walk and drive a car on the, busy streets. He can't, just can't. You have to grow up. You may feel bad about it. You may say it's a very unfair world. Look, I see my elder brother, 15 years older than me, drive the car, but I am not allowed. But that's how we think. We think God has been very unkind and unjust. He is not unkind and unjust. He knows the ordered plan. He knows what is needed at each step. And depending on the stage of evolution, we meet the experiences. There is something very interesting about this place, ashram. Someone told me, and it is so true, I have seen over years with many persons. When you come here, you meet the people and you meet the experiences that are necessary for your progress. And you can't generalize it. It's very interesting. Each one in the same place has very different kind of experiences. Of course, the core is there of the samadhi, but meeting people. There are people who will come and suddenly find everybody is helpful and everybody. There are people who come and they will be quite shocked with, the kind of people they meet. Essentially, it's like the experiences which are necessary for your progress at a given stage of evolution. And the same thing happens in world and life. Unfortunately, people become cynics. They draw hasty conclusions. But if they had the patience and trust, they would see that this was exactly what was needed for my growth at that point of time.
In the early days of Aurobindo, a young lady said something very interesting to me. She said, I've been in the ashram a long time. And she said, I've had many difficulties and many experiences. And she said, the churning continues here. And she said, yet when I go outside, I seem to represent the mother.
Yes, so true. That is the core.
That's the core.
Very interesting. Another, someone who was very drawn to Sri Aurobindo, reading essays on the Gita and other books and wanted to come to the ashram. This is probably early 70 or late 60s. Mother is still there in the physical body, and he would ask every year permission to come, and mother would say no. That time it was not like anyone could just walk in. Mother would say no, no, no. Then finally his friend said, doesn't matter, you come, it doesn't matter, you come. So he came. And message was sent to mother that, so and so has come. So there was a whole process. You go to Nalnida and then, he'll take to mother. Meanwhile, he was sitting in, I think IGH had just come up, or one of the guest houses, where he suddenly saw Ajanta's fresco on the wall. And he said, have I come to the right place? What is Ajanta's fresco doing here? And he started, all kinds of thoughts began to churn into his head. And he left and went away even before the message could come. And it was mother's grace and compassion that was preventing him to come prematurely. He was not yet ready. So he couldn't understand the, So this is how one meets. Those experiences will chip us, prepare us. And it's also true in world. Here it gets intensified.
I remember Aurobindo Basu, who was, for me, one of the great yogis.
Yes, of course.
And he wrote to Sri Aurobindo, may I come? Sri Aurobindo said, I put your question before the mother, and we agree that you should see more of the world. 16 years. And finally they let him come.
Even Amal Kiran. He said, Mother, I am done with the world.
Yeah.
Mother said, oh, really? Are you sure? Then look at what happened. He stayed, he had to go away on his own volition. Again, another great yogi. In his love for the mother carried him so beautifully.
Yeah.
And yet he had to go away. For 10 years he stayed outside. He himself said, I don't think I am still ready for staying here permanently. So these experiences which come, including failure and fall, are part of the great ascent. It's just that we get too much absorbed by the moment and learn by failure and progress by fall. Who could write these lines except the divine himself?
Yes.
Progress by fall. Learn by failure is okay. But progress by fall? And battle with environment and doom, by suffering discover his deep soul. So this is the process of evolution. So next time when we go through this, we don't have to blame anyone for it. Perhaps we have to only thank for everything that happens in our life. What we call good, what we call as bad, what we call as pleasant, what we call as unpleasant. These are surface reactions of our ignorant mind. Deep inside there is only delight.
Yes.
So this is how. And by possession grow to his own vasts. So this idea of possessing something is itself an ignorance. It's because we think it's other than me, so you want it. But it's not really true, because in the deepest sense, there are no two, there is no other, and anyways, as a child of the divine, you are free to be anywhere. Everything belongs to you because it belongs to the divine. So, but in our ignorance, there is a lure to get it simply because we are not aware of this deep truth. This truth of oneness and unity. So we possess one thing, then we want to possess another thing. What a painful, slow, long process. But there is another way to just discover the divine, and then everything is anyways yours, but not in the superficial sense of the word, because it's his. The famous shloka of Ishopanishad, Isha vasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita ma gridha kasya suddhanam. By renouncing, thou shalt have delight. Why seek lust after another person's possession? So he is showing another way. You want to have delight by possessing all? It's a long process if you try to follow that path, and you will end up in a spiral. But another path is by renouncing and knowing that all belongs to the Lord. It's an inner process. Even whatever we may have, to remember it belongs to the Lord. So you will experience the delight which you believe that it will come by possessing everything in the universe. Often it makes us more insecure. I have seen people, when they have less money, they are unhappy because they have less money. When they have more money, they are unhappy because of more money, because now to manage that money is also a problem. And and there is of course the income tax and all these. So that is another kind of fear. So while we have, we should use it rightly and in a nice way. That's the thing given to us. And therefore what happens to this power of life? Halfway she stopped and found her path no more. That's given to it. It's foredoomed to failure. Because then only it will be pushed out of its comfort zone and spring to the next level. So it cannot be fulfilled and satisfied. It is written in its destiny. Nothing to do with one person or next person. But whoever is in this state of consciousness is bound to eventually reach a point or a wall from where one doesn't know. It's like an issueless place. Yet finished seemed, still nothing was achieved but to begin. Yet finished seemed the circle of her force. That everything one has done, but it seems one has achieved nothing. It's a very sad thing when sometimes, we see people, I have had encounters, people towards the end of their life, and they feel so miserable that we could do nothing. They have a full family, an empire, they have children, grown up, doing well, but they end up with this hollowness that we have done nothing. Because it's like moving in that circle and ending at the same point at the end of the day. Only she had beaten out sparks of ignorance. This is very interesting image. I don't know how it was done outside, but this is a very typically Indian image. In India, also holy days, and when there used to be this fire, that primitive kind of early fire, kitchen fire, not the gas one. So you burn a wood or, the fire is there, and slowly, when the fire is dying down, there is very little fire left, and something has to be heated up. So you don't want to once again light up the fire. So you look for little bit sparks. If they are there, you beat it so that air flows and little bit of fire would come up again and possibly heat it. Otherwise, if it's done, then done. Either eat the cold stuff or reignite it. So this beating out sparks of ignorance is a very interesting image, because I have a memory of this, as a child. So because it's very cumbersome to light the chula again. You don't. It's a long process, not like a gas switch on. So if it's gone and suddenly something comes and you need to heat it, the only option is, if there is still some sparks, you beat it, and possibly that will give some fire or heat. So sparks of ignorance. Only the life could think and not the mind. It's very interesting. Only the sense could feel and not the soul. Though people use this word interchangeably. Oh, I have this soul feeling. Another most misused word, soulmate. It's nothing but the sense mate. But and so often someone would ask Sri Aurobindo about complementary souls and marriage. Of course, Dilip Kumar Roy and Sri Aurobindo said, if you are serious about sadhana, think 50 times before marrying. Very frank view. And he says, all this talk about complementary souls is very often a ploy of ignorance to keep you tied. So it's much better to know things as they are. Don't, use terms which are superfluous. Of course, there are complementary souls, but they are so rare. And the whole world conspires to keep them away because, it's a great power. So, but to regard it every passing and fleeting attraction as a complementary soul, I mean, is
interesting that 4 lines begin with the word
only. Only, yes. Only she had beaten out sparks of ignorance. Only the life could think and not the mind. Only the sense could feel and not the soul. Only was lit some heat of the flame of life. Again, this same beating the sparks of ignorance. Like in cold winter night when people, light the fire. Then towards the morning, this fire is dying down. So you beat it so that little more warmth can come. So it can give a little bit glow. And that's what people confuse it with the intimation from the soul. So very often when people say, my soul feels so. So my counter question is, have you even experienced your soul? To use the word soul is a very big word. It cannot be used loosely and lightly. I mean, it means something. It's something so solid, so real. I mean, once you experience it, the whole world goes topsy-turvy. She says there is a complete reversal of values. But every feeling that arises because it's strong, intense, moves us in one direction doesn't mean it's a soul feeling. So, only was lit some heat of the flame of life, some joy to be, some rapturous leaps of sense. So this joy of life, though it is good at a certain stage, we should not mistake for the deep, deep, deep joy of the soul. So this is simply something which leaps the sense. All was an impetus of half-conscious force, a spirit sprawling, drowned in dense life foam. What a wonderful line this is. Even music. A spirit sprawling, drowned in dense life foam. A vague self grasping at the shape of things. This is how the experience is. There is so much of foam and froth on the surface that the spiritual element is there, but it's drowned in all this. He's not using the word darkness, which is different. It's like the foam and froth of life. And there is the spirit drowned within it. Last few lines. Behind all moved, seeking for vessels to hold a first raw vintage of the grapes of God, on earth's mud a spilth of the supernal bliss. So behind all moved, seeking for vessels to hold. What is behind all this? Ultimately, it's the delight of creation. So it is looking for vessels to hold. And in the bargain, something of it spills into it. And that's enough for it to hold.
And so beautiful. First raw vintage.
Raw vintage of the grapes
Grapes
of
of
God.
God.
I'm sure if somebody knows the whole process of,
Yes.
extracting wine out of grapes would know it better. That, the first stage is, of course, the grapes are uh, kind of rotting. Rotting is not the right word, but they are fermenting.
Fermenting.
And, that also a lot of people take it and feel some kind of intoxication. But then, if you really want the real stuff, you have to allow it to go through process. At the end, it's distilled, and then it comes like real spirit. It's called spirit. Probably the same process as extracting of the spirit. That reminds me of a very interesting joke when. No, it's very nice because very often I see this on the ashram notice board, and I remember. Mani Ben was telling me, she has worked in Golkund.
Yeah.
So they came here as young people, and very soon, within few days, they found on the notice board, tomorrow spirit distribution, free spirit distribution or something like that. Now it was, distribution of this spirit, which, you use for cleaning and all. So it is given as part of the prosperity chit. But when she saw it, she said, my God, this place is very advanced spiritually. Even spirit is distributed on prosperity. You just write a chit and you get spirit. And she thought that, spirit is distributed free. She said, my God, what a great yoga this is. Till she discovered that it's another kind of spirit. So, but sometimes it's very interesting and that's how the image goes of Somras. The intoxicating wine, which is the wine or the ambrosia of the gods. And the other intoxicating wine, which is a mimic of the vital. So vital mimics everything, and this is one of them. This is the heady wine, which makes us more and more dizzy, disorients us, lose all our established norms and values of life. And that is the other one which liberates us, also disorients us in a certain way. We lose all the, sense of values of the mental world, but of course we get something else, which is indeed the delight. So this first raw vintage. On earth's mud is filth of the supernal bliss, intoxicating the stupefied soul and mind. A heady wine of rapture, dark and crude. That's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Stupefied.
Yeah.
So it's a heady wine, and this is very often mistaken for the spiritual bliss. Some of these dervish, and they, of course, not all of them, but see how a thing, when it is turned into a collective movement, can become so problematic, like the Dionysians. So, similarly, in the Sufis, you will see that they move round and round, and it's one of the ways that even some Tibetan lamas, so they move round and round and round to eventually they get that experience of bliss. And then as they move in this constant movement, they experience a kind of inner joy, and they are intoxicated with it. And there are a lot of things written around this experience. But actually, initially, it's not the spiritual substance that comes. It is the vital movement churning.
Yes.
And the joy which is in this corner, that corner, this suddenly comes to the surface. And this can very easily be mistaken for the true spiritual experience. Even in India, certain bhajans and kirtans where people, wake up at night, and what is called in India as Rat Jaga, they keep awake whole night singing bhajans and dancing, and they feel joy, and they feel, this is so nice. It's not the true spiritual joy, but something from the vital, which is mistaken for the true stuff. So here we see that it's a heady wine of rapture, dark and crude, dim, uncast yet into spiritual form, obscure inhabitant of the world's blind core, an unborn Godhead's will, a mute desire. This word desire with a capital D, is a master stroke, because a lot of people believe that this world is the creation of desire. It takes that semblance when creation begins. But deep inside, it's not desire, but delight, which is looking for instruments for it to be held. So we'll stop with these few lines. behind all moved, seeking for vessels to hold. A first raw vintage of the grapes of God. We know these grapes, incidentally, the mother has given the name Ananda.
Ananda.
So it's even technically, literally, spiritually. So, many of the flower names which mother has given, Sri Aurobindo has given identical names in another context.
Yes.
This is one of them.
Very true. Yes.
Again, divine love flower,
Yeah.
rose.
Yeah.
So Sri Aurobindo has given the similar names, of course, not to so many flowers, but to whichever he has given the name, it's exactly identical. This is here, we read one of them, grapes of God. What are the grapes of God? Mother has given the name Ananda to grapes. And from that, the first raw vintage is this crude and heady wine. On earth's mud is spilled of the supernal bliss, intoxicating the stupefied soul and mind. The soul is stupefied because it's fallen into a dense field of ignorance. A heady wine of rapture, dark and crude, dim, uncast yet into spiritual form, obscure inhabitant of the world's blind core, an unborn Godhead's will, a mute desire. So we'll stop here.